Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Digital Data Podcast. And this is a special episode for International Women's Day, which is being celebrated on the 8th of March. And we are very excited about it. I am Cecilia Maundu. I'm a broadcast journalist. I'm a digital security trainer. I work at the intersection of technology, human rights, and journalism with a focus of countering online abuse against women journalists. And today, my guest is someone that we've been planning to have for the longest time. She's the one of the young women who are change makers in the continent. And I'm so happy to be able to host her today. I'm going to give her an opportunity to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Cecilia. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Irene Mwenda. I am the Executive Director at Pollicy. Pollicy is a portmanteau of two words, polling and policy making. And we work on the intersections of data and technology from a feminist approach. We use research. We use African-based research by Africans to show how we are using technologies and how data can redesign our government service delivery.
So, Irene, I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
You know, as I said, you are one of the young women who are making, like breaking the glass ceiling in this sector whereby we are talking about we need more women on board. So the first thing that I would want you to talk about is how has been your experience being the executive director of Pollicy since you came in? And as I was telling you earlier, you look better than you came in. You know, the way they say the ED jobs is the hardest job. You make it look like actually it's manageable. So tell us.
Okay. Strong question to start. Thank you, Cecilia, for putting me on the spot. I can say one that I'm very honored to take on and to wear these shoes. I'm very honored that I took after our founder, Nima Aya. And I have served, yesterday was 6 months, and I have learned a lot about myself as an individual, the limits I can get to, the things I can do, which I always thought someone else can do it. I don't know what that is, but I imagine I can do it. And I've also learned that teamwork is everything, and I take that to heart. I am very blessed to work with the strongest and very able team at Pollicy, spread all over the continent in over 5 countries. And I'm able to learn about their cultures, about how they just come to work, to the workplace rather, how, that intersects with their personal lives and the mitigation, risk mitigation measures that we need to take as, an executive director and as an institution to ensure that the workplace is a very conducive, human-centered place that they get to enjoy.
I must say, I must vouch for your team Pollicy, the likes of Philip. Hi, Philip. The likes of Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Amazing. And Nima is the first person who gave me my first consultancy in this space.
Okay.
I'll never forget. So she's, when I talk about the heroes in my story, she's one of them.
I'm glad.
Now we are gearing to International Women's Day.
Yes.
And the theme for this year is Inspire Inclusion. So to my first question, we are celebrating International Women's Day, which is on 8th of March. The theme is Inspire Inclusion. How do you define inclusion within the context of gender equality, and why is it important in the fight for women's rights and empowerment? I mean, right now you're the poster child of inclusion. I mean, being a woman in this space, not just a woman, a young woman in this space. So how do we talk about inclusion when it comes to the issue of fighting for women's rights and empowerment?
I define it simply as working together. There is no way you're building tools, you're innovating, and these tools are not serving the whole population or the bigger part of the population. There is no way you're collecting data, for instance, in our continent, and then taking the data to serve your businesses elsewhere, and the benefits or the income from that data is not coming back to serve the continent. So I believe inclusion is co-creation, co-building, and co-earning, co-benefiting. So those simply for me is what I can define as inclusion, but also at a point where different, we present ourselves differently. It's also important that we recognize that human beings can exist in different forms as long as they do not harm or cause harm to anyone else. So it's also important to recognize that there are those and recognize that they want to exist in a different way, they need also to be included. It's not our part to judge or to say that, they're not conforming to these standards, therefore they're not going to benefit from society. It's important that we recognize that now more than ever, that our children, the youth, even older people are existing in different forms. So we must work together and support them to get and achieve their needs.
I like that. And in what ways can we improve gender data collection and utilization to contribute more to equitable national planning, especially when it comes to African countries?
Thank you for that. It sits at the heart of what we do at Pollicy.
Yes.
Our heartbeat is gender data, influencing governments to use gender data for effective and better service delivery. Our heartbeat is gender data to also influence tech companies, our innovators, to also build better, to serve women better, and particularly African women. So some of the methods and some of the recommendations we've made in especially gender data collection is to ensure that you go where the people are and you meet them at their point of needs, as opposed to assuming that things are done a certain way. If I can take the context of many of us in urban areas, we're able to access laptops, we're able to access smart devices, we're able to access survey tools on our phones, on our laptops. But there are those of us who are not even literate enough to understand and use smartphones. So it's important to use simple language when you're engaging and collecting data with different communities. Go where they are, speak a language that they can understand, break down the issues in a way that they can understand so that you're able to pick the additional challenges that they experience. And from our approach, really, it's really what enables us advance better innovation. If you look at period apps, that's a very good example. Yeah, I know almost all of us use a form of tool to measure or check our periods as women. So initially, I know the initial apps or the initial tools that were put out were designed by our brothers because they were hoping to help us in a way. But many of them took time to take our recommendations. It needs to consider that for me, it's not exactly 21 or 28 days because that's the standard. If you read public health literature, it's 21 or 28 days, whereas there's some it's 23 days, it's for 24 days, some 19 days. So they're able to collect this data real time to be able to improve some of this innovation. Some of the other ways that I believe gender data is useful for government service delivery, if you look at the workplace now, I think every individual is facing quote unquote a training crisis where you're being asked, train for this tool, train for this digital service coming into the workplace, train for this procurement system, or in the case of even MSMEs or small business owners, you need to have evolutionized your payment systems, the way you present your business. So in this week, I feel gender data has been and continues to be relevant so that you can custom make some of these modules for training and for improving women's businesses. For instance, gender data has also been quite useful for government to make policies that serve women. For instance, if you're building a market, you need to be able to consider a room or a creche for women to go and breastfeed. And gender data will show that, women a certain age work at this particular time, end up, building their families in this way. We need to consider some of these issues so that we can design and build better. So those are some of the things I feel, gender data is relevant for, and additional things that many other partners work on.
So what are some of the challenges that you encounter when you are collecting gender data?
Well, one, the way we stand for women and present, even sometimes, it could be even a women team, sometimes may ask questions of why the boy child is being left behind or why isn't there.
That question is very common nowadays.
I know. Whereas we've also been able to show evidence that ordinarily and historically, women and girls have been left out. There are some systems and policies that have come and improved some areas of women's lives, but there are so many other issues that we're still tackling that women continue to, quote unquote, lag behind or still need a level the playing field to be leveled for them to be for the issues to be advanced. So the challenges we get, for instance, are that, sometimes it's an all-women team, and then in some cases you may not even have talent. So sometimes it's men leading, which is okay. There's no problem. But more and more, if you think about some programs we run at Pollicy, we have a program called Data Ladies. Sometimes we have a challenge of attracting ladies into the program for Data Ladies. Mm-hmm. We end up attracting even more men. You see, then there is an issue where we feel, and we have continuously seen that we need more women in data science, so that they can work on public interest challenges on data in Africa, and also public interest issues in technology. So those are some of the very, I can't say immediate things that we see. And generally, government buy-in, because it's an additional task and it's an additional question you ask yourself. You don't just look at things as they are. You need to interrogate further. So it adds an additional layer of labor, which also I feel for some traditional organizations or traditional offices or people who work in this sector find, a bit strenuous, which, I feel more training has been able to change a few people's mindsets, but we also need to do a lot in terms of capacity strengthening for people to just join us in the advocacy for gender data. Yeah.
And Irene, what role does culture play in some of those challenges?
I can say beyond, if I'm quantifying it, in Africa particularly, it could be a mixture of both culture and political goodwill, because they go hand in hand. The people we elect, the people we choose, the people who are appointed, take their cultures, take their beliefs, take their ways of life into these positions, into these roles, and to the way they work, which highly influences whether they, prioritize these things. Do I want to prioritize the women in my community, or just general issues? Do I want to prioritize that, it's normal, girls don't go to school when they reach a certain age. They can go and help their families sometimes, So culture really plays a lot, and shifting mindset has been something that we've been working on. If you see, most of our research also articulates there is a huge role for the public health, particularly mental health associations, schools, especially education curricula, to really include issues of tackling things like online gender-based violence that you're very big on. These things need to be taught early enough in school so that we can start changing the culture and mindsets and attitudes around these conversations, which can be sometimes they're either too hard because of the jargon, or they're not priority, because they're not tangible. You don't see someone having a cut on their face if they've been abused online. Yeah.
So Irene, you guys are very big on research, So I read a research by Pollicy, and it was on gender data in evolving data ecosystem. How can the findings of this report inform advocacy efforts and policy recommendations aimed at tackling online violence against women in politics, not just in Kenya, but globally? Remember, this is the election year, 74 countries going into an election. And the other day in our NDI meeting, we were discussing that this issue of online violence against women politicians is not unique only to Kenya. It's literally a thing that is around the world, and we've seen that a lot of women are shying away from politics because of this issue. So when it comes to the findings and the recommendations you did on that, what are some of the recommendations that can actually work?
Thank you for that, Cecilia. In fact, that is my Bible now when working in this work, and when I'm implementing and considering even expanding some of the projects and work at Pollicy. And some of the key pillars that came out of that wonderful research led by our able researcher Bobina and other individuals who are involved in the data collection, even meeting with the country data protection authorities, Zambia, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Uganda, and Kenya. We were able to be able to summarize. I've been able to summarize the pillars into at least 6 pillars that guide our Afrofeminist data governance. And according to the findings in the study, we were able to introduce these pillars so that it can guide anyone who wants to delve, even for governments who want to delve into Afrofeminist data governance. One of the pillars is a contextual understanding of the data ecosystem. This means an adoption of a holistic view of data ecosystems, accounting for diverse actors, networks, and flows of data tailored to our context here in Africa. The other pillar that was able to come out clearly from that research that you read word for word is ethical and inclusive data practices. You already asked me about this, and it means ensuring ethical data practices, including informed consent, privacy preservation as needed, including marginalized populations. And when you look at another pillar of Afrofeminist data governance for us, it means addressing the power asymmetry. You recognize where you are with your power and how you counteract with power imbalances in data ecosystems caused by, of course, colonial legacies, neocolonialism as we see to date, especially in the digital space, and unequal resource distribution if you look at economic justice conversations. Another pillar on Afrofeminist data governance from that research is building capacity and literacy. I had just spoken about that, where we have to consider developing data literacy programs from an African standard, using an African standard. We need to co-agree as Africans. Our nations need to really set the pace. And these trainings, of course, will target different stakeholders, including policymakers, civil society organizations, and the general public. The last two pillars are encouraging participatory governance, which is very, feminist, where we need to foster social dialogues, enabling diverse stakeholders to engage in data governance decisions. Remember, beyond the elections, Africa has the youngest population in the world. And most of the data collected in the region informs a lot of decisions from job creation, technology, innovation creation, governance, innovation from even the public health and education sectors. How do these people engage with the youth in Africa? Do they have forums where they listen to feedback about the systems that they're building? And then the last pillar is strengthening institutional frameworks to implement comprehensive data protection regulations that are coming out and strengthen enforcement mechanisms to promote accountability and transparency.
Let me cycle back to the issue of culture and digital literacy. There's a time we were doing a training in 2017, and we were training elected MCAs. And one thing we noticed, like digital literacy is very, very low. So how can we go also about talking about digital literacy? Remember, most of our population, especially in African countries, they live in the rural areas, and there's so many things that come into play. There's accessibility, there's electricity. We were having a discussion the other day. We were like, we live in Nairobi, and we're in this bubble that Kenya is a hotbed of innovation, which is true. But in Nairobi, when you go to some rural areas, they're actually grappling with electricity issue, how to charge that smartphone. So what are some of the ways, if policy has been involved in the issue of digital literacy, you've gone about educating the population, especially women, and women who are elected leaders or who are planning to be in the take up electoral seats?
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia. For us, it's really about building digital resiliency. Because what we've noticed, everyone, especially in the urban areas, you have your smart devices, and you're able to use different, technologies to serve your different needs, both personal, professional, and even for the public. And more for even the elected officials, we noticed that in two of our research that we were supported with the National Democratic Institute to conduct in Kenya and Uganda, we noticed that gender disinformation continues to be the biggest hindrance to women using digital tools and to women engaging with digital tools. So what that means is that there's already half of the population being excluded using these social media, for instance, social media tools. And we asked ourselves, what could be the best solution going forward? One, definitely make them counteract and react and see how they would have even designed these tools better. And what we did is we did an assessment of at least 90 elected women councillors in Uganda, Tanzania, and Senegal. And we asked them, what is usually your challenge when you're using your for instance, Facebook, to do your work, to showcase what you've been doing. And they said, sometimes I'm sitting in the office the whole day. I can't prioritize, posting. I have to go home, fend for my family. And then they'll say sometimes it's really not a priority for me. I wish someone else could do it on my behalf. And you realized, particularly for elected women officials, it's a second job that we're asking them to do. But it doesn't mean that it cannot be done. We just need to make it either, easier for them, and we need to build the digital resilience for them to see that they can do it as a blend of their everyday tasks and as they even take and fend for their families. But the more we are conducting our capacity strengthening and trainings and engaging with communities all over Africa, the more we realize that there have been other players who've come in and done their trainings and left. We also realize that there have been big players who continuously have support and continue to offer continuous training. But when we ask our communities, do you feel it's quite relevant? Are you going to use it maybe in the next election? Are you going to use it for your business? You get, it becomes a case of I'll see if I'll prioritize. And what you realize is that there needs to be a standardized way of doing this, of implementing these programs, so that we can be able to measure impact from a standard point of view. So at Pollicy, in fact, our programs department, we're really looking at creating and co-creating actually with other civitechs a standard that, will say, if you come into this community and you train them, you must meet some of these standards, and to ensure that you've effectively trained them, you've effectively left a mark in their lives, so that 10 years to come, you'll see, okay, this they used. Some of these things we've trained on them, they've used. This, it's not relevant. And this other, maybe it can be relevant at another time. So those are some of the things we are getting into. And I'm very honored because we've started conversations with the Uganda Ministry of ICT.
Oh, wow.
And they're able partners, and we hope to see how this is going to play out.
Yeah, because if the theme of International Women's Day is inspire inclusion. So if we don't talk about that, then women will still be excluded from the online platform.
Yeah.
So Irene, let's talk about the future of work, which Pollicy has really been advocating for. So how do you envision the future of work evolving in the coming years, and particularly in the light of technological advancement and shifting societal trends?
Wow. My latest, beyond what we implement at Pollicy, my latest challenge with the future of work is on commensurate remuneration. If you consider all the opportunities that the President, Honorable President, His Excellency President Ruto has been opening up for the youth in Kenya, the other side of the coin is a remuneration commensurate, because I now hear you're pressing your laptop and you're getting money.
Unafinya $1.
Ukifinya unapata $1. So is that dollar worth the work you've put in? For instance, for the different data work that I know many of the youth are engaging in. So for us, the future of work is looking at things like eliminating neocolonialism principles, where we do a lot of work that leaves our regions, our countries. We do a lot of we build a lot of systems that don't end up serving us directly. They have to go somewhere else and then come back, whereas they can serve us and be for us and by us. Yes. And also I look at the future of work where the tax regime will consider that things have evolved to be able to either reduce taxes on innovators' costs and on young people's costs to innovate, so that they're able to build for Africa. And my other thinking, which is also quite away from what we do at Pollicy, is the different opportunities that technology is really opening up for particularly young women. I know there are young women content moderators, young women fact checkers, and now the thing that I asked that we need more of young women data scientists to ensure that even as these courses are being rolled out, what's the opportunity for them to integrate these opportunities early on in education life, beyond university or beyond high level high-level education or tertiary education. They need to start be integrated as early as kindergarten, so that women are starting to see the value of really thinking about these courses early on and make decisions very early on. Yeah.
Okay, and what impact do you anticipate artificial intelligence? Because I know you guys have done some work on artificial intelligence. What impact do you anticipate that artificial intelligence, AI, and other emerging technologies will have on the nature of jobs and employment opportunities?
Wow. For sure, really easing the burden of, say, reading lots of materials for many people who you need to prepare, say, for interviews, you need to prepare for schoolwork, and you have to go through 1,000 pieces of information. I believe AI can be used ethically, to summarize some of these, schoolwork. And I know many organizations and companies now are working on their safe or use of AI in their offices. So same case for youth, more and more I feel like our governments should be very much involved to ensure that they shape the principles around the use, around the ethical and safe use of AI, because in this election year, actually, what I've seen is that a country like South Korea was able to institute a ban for a few weeks until they figure things out about generative AI and how it's used in the campaigns. They did not necessarily say it was bad, or they didn't say don't use it. It's let's just sit and figure it out, and then we'll be able to institute a mechanism that will ensure that everyone is using it safely. So for me, I feel there's a point of need for intervention with civil society actors, our well-wishers, our donors, our scientists, to create a standard that ensures that everyone uses it ethically, because it's going to serve people to ease their burden at work, in schools, as I said. Another thing I also see for the youth is to help them sharpen their ideas, because we're always thinking, I have this idea, I have this idea. You come together with your friends, come together with your family. There's possibilities of, using data from, generative AI to be able to sharpen your idea.
Yeah.
But remember, kids, it's the information on all these generative AI tools is not accurate. You need to go and, fact check. You need to confirm and so forth. Yeah, a lot of work needs to be done, especially in the African context.
And that's what people don't know. They think like any information that this generative AI is giving is like that's the gospel truth. No.
You also need to do much of the work.
And that's why you can't depend on AI for research or anything. It's, like US.
Yeah.
So, Irene, let's go back to the issue of online violence. So how can technology and social media platforms, because I know you've been doing a lot of work on this, how can technology and social media platforms be better utilized to support and empower women in politics, especially in combating online harassment and violence?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Cecilia. There is something I wanted to shed light for us to all think about. We've been working on the survivor side. We've been asking questions. We've been getting solutions for the survivor side of, gender disinformation, online technology facilitated gender-based violence, and that is not wrong. It's equally needed. However, we also need to look at how perpetrators organize, because they are very resourceful individuals.
Exactly.
These are smart people.
The cyber mobs, extremely smart.
Yeah, I don't know why we always think that they're not smart people. And we've been, for the past couple of months, we've been working with, and our coalition supported by Web Foundation, the women rights online work that they had started earlier on to look at perpetrator behavior. And we have been able to come up with at least 7 personas of how perpetrators look like, from an African perspective and the global perspective, and we'll be sharing this in 2 weeks at CSW. For those attending,
can't wait,
for those attending, please go and see. And the personas are, of course, are not limited. Those are just a start to also show some of the platforms who are part of these workshops, how personas look like. And out of that, we were able to see the patterns, and the patterns are very clear that some algorithms on these platforms are enabling these behaviors. And because of poor regulation, national and regional regulation, these algorithms can go and they can continue to enable perpetrators to continue to harm a select group of people online. Unfortunately, the select group of people online are majority women and girls. Yeah, and for perpetrators, it's a mix of both women and girls. We didn't say it's just men. No. So we recognize that there's a lot of resources and work needs to be done to just investigate perpetrators from all fronts, looking at it from a mental health point of view, from an economic point of view, because some are organized and they resource each other, so there's an economic gain there. There's also a point of social issues point of view, and there's a point of also, is it because of ideologies such as religious extremism, political ideologies, and so forth. So there is an opportunity there for women rights organizations, particularly in Africa, to also continue asking very difficult questions on why perpetrators are easily enabled, and how can the law be used to curb algorithmic harms, and how can everyday research that is being conducted used to stop and can be used to enable platforms design their tools better.
So as we come to the tail end of this conversation, and as we say, this is a special edition for International Women's Day. When we talk about inspire inclusion, one of the things that is really keeping women off the digital platform is online violence, and that has been supported by a lot of research, which you've done, Pollicy has done a lot. So in a scale of 1 to 10, when you look at the regulation that is coming up, what role do you think is going to play? Because one of the things that has been noticed is most of the laws are very vague. Let's come to Kenya, the cyber harassment law. I think it's section 27 of the Computer Misuse Act. It doesn't define what is cyber harassment. It doesn't contextualize the crime. And also it is more sliding to silencing freedom of expression. So when you look at the steps that have been made, where are we in a scale of 1 to 10 that the regulation will come actually help this? And you see, when I interview women who've gone through online violence, they say, we don't report because we feel like, first of all, even when you report, what much can be done? And also that's one way we say that we don't get enough data, because if people don't report, then we don't know the magnitude of the problem. So what hope do you have for these regulations that are coming up? And not only in Kenya, around the world, because I know you've done a lot of work on this.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, because it needs to start somewhere. Unfortunately, it needs to start somewhere. It needs countries like Kenya having Section 27, and then a country like South Sudan thinking, okay, Kenya has already led the way. We need to, because they are all member states of the African Union, and they need to institute and share their status reports every now and then. Because at the end of the day, if you look at how the EU has organized itself, the countries in the EU region, they came together under the GDPR, which is very, very effective to combat some of these challenges with the different platforms. So it needs a lot of national government efforts in the region. And we have to start somewhere. I'll recognize that. I'm so glad to hear the latest of, just a bit of activity in the Tanzanian data protection and just legislation scene, because it'll enable some of the vices we've seen that, allegedly one of their apps that they all really enjoy using, such as it's called Clubhouse. It was allegedly shut down or restricted for a while. In Uganda, I know things like Facebook is also allegedly restricted. So regulation will enable both the citizenry and the government be able to come to a standpoint or to a meeting point and agree, you know what, we need to ensure that as these tools are imposed on us, as these platforms are imposed on us, they can be imposed with the best algorithms to work for us and support us and not spread any forms of hate speech and disinformation.
So thank you so much. Do you have anything to add or any message that you have for International Women's Day as you celebrate young women like yourself?
Yes. We have not done enough. Let us continue to recognize particularly African women and girls who are doing a lot in different sectors, and particularly for the data science and technology space. Let us see how we can continue shedding light on them so that they can pick on different opportunities that keep on coming up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making the time out
you.
of your busy schedule. It's not easy. It's not every day that I sit with EDs. Thank you so much, Irene.
Thank you.
So all I can say is the theme for this year is hashtag inspire inclusion. So let's make inclusion, and inclusion comes in different sectors, as we're talking about the digital platform, because that's where we are advocating women and girls to be. So thank you so much for joining us. Please check out Pollicy work. They have amazing research and a amazing website where it's so easy to navigate. And I think, Irene, one of the things that I really like about your research is you go, first of all, you get the pointers, and then now you get the whole report. So yeah, good work on what you guys are doing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So thank you so much, and see you on the next episode.